Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1975. She was first struck by the beauty of the mountains at age 10 on a school trip to Mount Nasu. Junko Tabi began her climbing career after graduating from Showa's Women's University in Tokyo, forming the Ladies Climbing Club Japan in 1969. In 1975, Junko led the Japanese women's Everest expedition through blizzards and an avalanche to the 29,000-foot summit of Mount Everest. On May 16th, Junko Tabi became the first woman to reach the top of the globe. Her thirst for adventure had not been quenched. Junko was also the first woman mountaineer to climb the world's highest peaks on all 7 continents. With the same passion and perseverance that conquered Everest, Junko currently directs an organization to preserve mountain environments as we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1996. Christina Sanchez is a bold, courageous woman who quit her job as a beautician and entered a world of danger. On weekends, she stepped into the ring, and on good nights, she made a killing. On May 25th, Christina Sanchez became the first woman matador in Spanish bullfighting history. A beautiful femme fatale, Christina entered the masses and proved that women can face the bull and win. Yet perhaps her toughest competitor is not the bull, but male critics who believe in Spanish tradition, where the arena is a test of true manhood. Some male matadors refuse to compete against her. Nonetheless, Christina Sanchez lived out her dream in the bull ring and retired a star. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1898. The most influential woman in the history of China was born Sun Mei Ling on February 12th. After graduating from Wesley College in the United States, Sun returned to China and met Chiang Kai-shek, a rising star in the Chinese military. The couple married and became a political power when Chiang was named leader of the Nationalist Party. Madame Chiang was her husband's interpreter, advisor, and spokesman. With her ambition, sophistication, and diplomatic skills, she was the first Chinese nationalist and second woman ever to address the U.S. Senate. Forever remembered as the eternal First Lady, Madame Chiang Kai-shek passed away on October 23, 2003, at the age of 105. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1975. Three Japanese sisters have made a mark on the fashion world, each in their own unique way. The inspiration for Junko Kosino is creating harmony from extreme contrasts, blending a contemporary style with the grace of Asian culture. Junko owns boutiques in Paris, New York, Tokyo, Beijing, and Hanoi, and she presents a new collection each year in Paris. Michiko Koshino is a London-based designer and the Club Couture queen, fusing Asian-inspired designs with colorful, reflective fabrics. She was the first to invent inflatable clothing and market her own condoms. Hiruko Koshino's lines are perhaps the most refined, with the perfect balance between vintage designs of the Jazz Age and Asian classics such as the kimono, as we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1943. At the height of the women's liberation movement of the 1970s, one woman rose up and changed the world of sports. In 1972, Sports Illustrated named her their first Sportswoman of the Year. She is Billie Jean King. Though she was the first woman athlete to earn $100,000 and the holder of 20 Wimbledon titles, the most ever, Billie Jean will perhaps be most remembered for her Battle of the Sexes match against aging tennis player Bobby Riggs. Billie's status as a feminist leader rose to the top when she beat Bobby in the televised event. Billie Jean King helped found the Women's Tennis Association and aggressively fought for equal prize money and professionalism, as we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 69 BC. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh of Egypt. Her legendary life and death has continued to inspire playwrights, filmmakers, and actresses. She was born in 69 BC, and at 18 she inherited the throne. When her brother Ptolemy XIII sent her into exile, Cleopatra gained Roman support by rolling herself up in a carpet and presenting herself as a gift to Julius Caesar. Caesar fell in love with her and had Ptolemy killed. Cleopatra and Caesar returned to Egypt and gave birth to a son. When her son and her lover were murdered, she married Mark Antony. As civil war escalated, Antony committed suicide and Cleopatra famously wrapped an asp around her wrist, a symbol of Egyptian royalty, and the poisonous bite ended her life, as we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1995. From glitz and glamour to suits and paperwork. It was a very unusual career change, but in 1995, that's just what happened in Lima, Peru. A showgirl all her life in the nightclubs of Peru, Susie Diaz decided to run for Congress as the independent agrarian movement candidate. She campaigned from the back of a pickup truck in fishnet stockings, handing out condoms in central Lima. After winning a seat, she promised to tone it down. A virgin to politics, Diaz believes she won because she was honest. As Congresswoman, she vowed to fight for farmers' rights, women's issues, and funding for the arts. Susie Diaz served until 2000, when she decided to return to the limelight of the stage. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1876. Her given name was Margarth Zelle, but her stage name became synonymous with beautiful temptress. She created her own legendary persona as Mata Hari. Margarth married a British officer who moved her to Java in 1895. Here, she learned the traditional Javanese dances that would make her infamous. Homesick, Margarth returned to Amsterdam, divorced her abusive husband, and began her new life as an exotic dancer named Mata Hari. Because of her many affairs with military officers in World War I, she began to fraternize with the secret services of both sides. On October 15, 1917, she was charged with spying for the German Reich and executed by the French military. Her guilt or innocence is still a mystery, as we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1908. The horse-drawn vacuum pump dates back to 1860, but the upright prototype we use today was invented by a janitor named James Spangler from Canton, Ohio in 1908. Mr. Spangler's carpet sweeper was the source of his chronic cough, so he fastened a fan motor, a soapbox, and a pillowcase to a broom handle. It worked. The first person to buy his electric suction sweeper was his cousin, whose husband, William H. Hoover, realized the machine's potential and formed the Hoover Vacuum Cleaner Company. The vacuum cleaner remained an expensive luxury item until after World War II, when the vacuum became a standard for the rising middle class. The design has continually changed over the years. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1959. She became the Duchess of York after a fairy tale romance, but with the separation from her husband, she blossomed into a modern businesswoman. In 1985, Sarah Ferguson was invited to Windsor Castle, where she fell in love with the handsome Prince Andrew. They were married the following year in a beautiful ceremony at Westminster Abbey. Together, they had 2 children, Beatrice and Eugene. Andrew served in the Navy and rarely saw his family. Deeply depressed, Fergie immersed herself in charity work. Sarah and Andrew drifted apart, separating in 1992. Since her divorce, Fergie has established herself as an author of several children's books, as well as the spokeswoman for Weight Watchers. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1930. She was born Sandra Day on March 26th in El Paso, Texas, on a cattle ranch. After graduating from Stanford Law School, she discovered that no law firm was willing to hire a woman except as a legal secretary. Rebuffed by the private sector, she turned to public service and built an impressive legislative and judicial career, serving as an assistant attorney general, state senator, and the nation's first woman Senate majority leader. Following President Ronald Reagan's historic nomination, Sandra Day O'Connor became the first woman to serve on the United States Supreme Court. Justice O'Connor even published with her brother a warmly received family memoir titled Lazy Bee, growing up on a cattle ranch in the American Southwest. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1930. The dance marathon could be dated back to 1364 England, but they became an American phenomenon of the whimsical Jazz Age. Anyone could enter to compete in continuous motion for large cash prizes. The catch was the contestants could not fall asleep, which proved uproariously entertaining. Dancers were fed small meals like oatmeal and oranges 12 times a day while shuffling along. The music played was mostly slow with peppy numbers twice hourly, requiring dancers to pick up their feet. Some contests wheeled cots onto the dance floor, allowing entrants to sleep for short periods. The longest running dance marathon known lasted 22 weeks, 3.5 days in 1930. Dance marathons lingered into the dirty 30s, eventually fading away. As we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1913. New York socialite Mary Phelps Jacob had just bought a beautiful sheer evening gown for a glamorous event, but her corset ruined the effect of the dress. Mary designed a garment made of 2 handkerchiefs, a ribbon, and some cord into a back-bearing bra. Her new look was so adored, she received several orders that very night. For centuries, women had been pushed and tucked by the corset, which dates back to 2000 BC. The corset reigned until the early 20th century as fashions changed. World War I also gave the bra a boost when the Industries Board requested women stop buying corsets to reduce the consumption of metal. Cup sizes, elastic, and lycra have shaped the bra over the years into the versatile style women love today, as we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 269 AD. In ancient Rome during the rule of Claudius II, young men and women celebrated the feast of Lupercalia every February 15th. Men would draw a woman's name out of a lottery to be their sexual companion. Claudius the Cruel was having trouble enticing soldiers to join his armies. He figured that men did not want to leave their wives, so he banned marriage. At this time, there was a bishop named Valentine who felt compassion for young lovers and secretly married couples. The emperor had Valentine beheaded on February 14th, 269 AD. The pope named Valentine a saint and dedicated this day to his big heart. So, Lupercalia became Saint Valentine's Day, and men continued to seek the affections of young women in the name of love, as we look back and travel through history. Travels Through History is brought to you by Maple Leaf Foods. 1590. Known for their vibrant colors, beloved symbol of the Netherlands, the tulip caused quite a commotion in the early 17th century. Indigenous to Central Asia, the tulip was first brought to Holland in 1590 by Carolus Clusius, a famous botanist of the times. Named after the Turkish word for turban, at first the tulip was very expensive, growing only in the gardens of the wealthy. The Dutch sold their farms, homes, and animals in order to trade the tulip that was in high demand. Tulip mania led to oversupply, resulting in a tulip crash. The tulip's popularity is celebrated in famous Dutch paintings of the Golden Age. Holland continues its passion for the lovely tulip, producing over 9 billion bulbs annually. As we look back and travel through history.